So right off the top, and this is directed at you, Darren Urban, can we please not cuss on this week's show?
I can't promise that. Why would I promise something that I can't totally look, I'm going to do my best. I know that Cody is sitting there with his hand on the dump button or whatever we call this, the edit button, but I hopefully will clear that hurdle.
Okay.
But see, I don't have any young kids anymore, so it doesn't matter, right?
Just the young kids you have in the office, right?
Well, that's also true. Unfortunately, there are some people in the office that are younger than my kids, so there's that.
All right, let's acknowledge off the top here where everyone is at. I'm in Tempe. Did not get the invite to Green Bay, where both Darren and Dani are. This is for the benefit of those who are not watching on YouTube, Cardinals Underground for this week. So before we get into the joint practice, the bicycles, Dani, was there one for you, one for Darren, or was this strictly a players thing?
No, it's not for us. Why would we make this about us? Not about us, about the players. No.
It's always about us.
Although I will
us.
say it probably some of those bikes were definitely better suited for people more, maybe even not even my size, but maybe Dani's proportions rather than Hayden Connor at 300 pounds trying to.
Please, let's continue to talk about my body on this lovely episode of Cardinals Underground. Any other notes? No. No bikes for me. No. Yeah, that foot's real deep in his mouth right now. No bikes for us. Lots of players, lots of kids there. It was a warm welcome for the Cardinals players, which was fun to see autographs and have them ride their bikes down the hill.
Trey McBride, Buda Baker, I thought was cool. The Yelda Frold on a scooter that got posted on social media was.
Casey Kreider also on a scooter. That made me a little nervous because the hill's a little steep, but they all turned out to be just fine.
I will say, I seen the video of Trey McBride's one with the kid riding backwards on the front wall. I thought Trey was going kind of fast with the kid right there. I'm like, yikes! But he made it work. He's all pro in all areas.
Bike riding as well.
Yes.
I know I'm not going to like the answer to this question. I'll ask it anyway, Dani, especially after what I heard Michael Wilson say after practice that perhaps the weather was too good. How are things in Green Bay?
Beautiful. I did get a little sunburnt, so it was cloudy and then not cloudy and really windy at first, but I'm not saying that complaining because it's better than 112, 115 back in Arizona. So all things considered, it was good weather. There was no rain. There were a lot of fans. It was a really good environment for joint practice.
Okay, that's good. So it's 30 to 35, maybe even 40 degrees cooler where you guys are at compared to where I am at. That's what I get.
Did somebody say it was supposed to be 117 there today, Craig?
I don't know. It's just hot. Anytime you get over 110, it's hot. Whether it's 112, 114, it's just hot.
That's fair.
So,
that's not untrue.
Did you worry? Did you have to pack sunscreen? Was that even a consideration for this trip?
You know, it was funny. It was one of those days where it was like when the clouds were out, and it was no matter what. But there was a couple of times when the sun or when the clouds moved out and the sun was beating on you for a couple of minutes. But we were talking to Zaven Collins at the end, and I had sunglasses on. And when we first started talking to him, he was giving me garbage about wearing sunglasses. He goes, "It's not even sunny out here," which it wasn't. But he only talked for 5 minutes, and about halfway through, the sun came out, and I'm thinking to myself in my head, I'm like, well, now I'm glad I have sunglasses. I did not say that to him, though.
Of course not. You want to be respectful. First-hand account here, joint practice. There are very limited boots on the ground there in Green Bay. So despite what has been written and what I have seen tweeted, can you guys tell us what actually happened here during this joint practice with the Packers?
Partially. It was pretty tough to see what was going on, to be quite honest, with where the media was allowed to be along the sideline and right behind the players lining up on the field. So it was tough at times compared to fans in the stands on the opposite side of the field who had a really nice view. But it was similar to a game in the sense where there were ebbs and flows. From the beginning, the Cardinals looked sloppy from the jump. I don't know if that was with travel or just kind of getting things going a little slower. I mean, the offense, the first team offense, there were a lot of passes that were batted down, some drop passes right off the jump. The Packers defense got some early pressure, and kind of similarly for the Cardinals defense, their starters at first. But as practice went on and they found some rhythm, they looked good. They did. They looked very good, especially when we got to the point of 2-minute drills and red zone offense and defense. The Cardinals really got rolling, and it was nice to see.
The one highlight that I have seen, Darren, I guess a fan had caught the Marvin Harrison Jr. touchdown where he toe tapped. I guess this was the end of either 2-minute or red zone work, but that video now has gone viral. I thought both of you, including Zach as well, captured it on social media as best you could without.
Yeah, no video allowed.
But there is video now, courtesy of fans in the stands. Apparently, rules don't only apply to those with credentials.
Well, I will say that there were multiple volunteers walking around that facility with the sign of no photos, no videos, protect our place. So I was a little surprised to see that end up out there in the ether, although the video itself didn't really show a lot other than the end of the play where it was a fantastic toe-tapping touchdown catch by Marvin Harrison on a fade play that you see all the time in the NFL. But to kind of echoes Dani's point, it was, Dani and I have been through all these joint practices the past few years, and it has not gone great for the Cardinals. They had the 2 in Minnesota a couple years ago. The first day was really bad. The second day was a little bit better. The Indianapolis one was okay. I didn't think they were all that great last year against Denver. This was totally different. And it started the same kind of way. It started, you're like, like they're giving up big plays on defense. They're not making any plays on offense. And it was like a switch was flipped in a lot of ways, Dani.
It was similar to what we've talked about from preseason games when it comes to the offense of the quarterbacks ended up looking good, ended up protecting the ball, and the receivers were getting open. They were generating enough separation. They were winning contested catches, and they were finding the end zone. And I know that, it's still scripted to a certain extent, these joint practices, because you still need to contain and control certain parts of this, but the offense really did get rolling, and they looked good, and they were competitive. I don't want to say it was aggressive, but the emotions were heightened as practice went on, and there were probably 3 good scuffles. I didn't see any punches thrown, and again, I was pretty limited in seeing who specifically maybe was at the epicenter of those, but you could really feel the emotions, and I think that was as the Cardinals were really starting to gain confidence, and I think as the Packers were really starting to get frustrated. And defensively, by my account, there were 4 different interceptions. I mean, Elijah Jones had one in the 2-minute drill. Zaven Collins had one dropping back into coverage. Keaton Bug Crawford had a phenomenal interception over his back shoulder, going up against a receiver's probably 40 or so yards. So there were definitely flashes, and even a sack by Baron Brown. Sack in quotations.
Yeah, there you go.
By Baron Browning.
Well, and I'm going to say too. The other interception was to the psycho white guy, Dewey Wingard, who the interception is nice, but he was yapping a lot. And he brings a element that maybe they didn't have there. I mean, I think Jalen Thompson was a very good safety. I never got the impression he was much of a trash talker. That's an element that Wingard's bringing to the table. And the defense was hyped up. And Zaven Collins said that afterwards when I was asking about the emotions. That team celebrated like they won a Super Bowl after Harrison made the touchdown, and then right after, because the situation was you're driving down 7 with 2 minutes to go. They scored the touchdown with Harrison, and then they went for 2 for the win, and then Trey McBride got that. And on both plays, like the bench is emptied. The Cardinals
entire team.
The Harrison scored on the other side of the field from where the Cardinals were lined up, and they all ran into the end zone. And I don't think the Packers fans loved it all that much, but it was, and Zaven Collins was like, look, we know kind of how it's been here the last couple of years. We've got to rally around ourselves and encourage ourselves because We want to make sure, essentially, to keep our chins up because it hasn't always been good around here. And we know that's what we need to do is make sure everybody is behind the other guy. And that's what it looked like. And to have them perform as well as they did in this practice, I think means a lot, especially since that's basically it for the guys that mean a lot in terms of doing anything. They're not playing in this last game. And yeah, you're going to have practice, but now you're going to kind of be a little bit more careful as you get into practice because now you're in the home stretch before a game that counts.
On the celebration, was there a flag thrown for excessive celebrating? Anything
no,
like that?
No,
point?
But Max Melton had a pass breakup during 2-minute drill, and he went. They called him for taunting, like right after the play. I think he stood over the guy, and it was funny because the Cardinals bench was going crazy over that one too, and then they were angry. And again, you got to be smart about some of these things, but the emotion was there, and for all the slings and arrows, Dani, that this defense has taken from a lot of different ways, they had a nice day today, and I think they're trying to rally amongst themselves because they know there's probably not going to be a whole lot of people rallying around them outside.
Well, there's also still a lot of competition going on the defensive side of the ball, much more so than the offense. I mean, we could sit here and we could pencil in the offensive starters at this point. Defense is not that simple, and Max Melton happens to be one of those players who's really making a push to be a starting cornerback opposite of Will Johnson, really competing against Denzel Burke. So there's a lot of emotions there as these players are not just fighting to make the team, but fighting to make a roster spot. And then, just a few notes of one, Will Johnson did not participate, so we don't have an update there because we weren't aware that was going to be the case beforehand, but he was in street clothes off on the sideline, so that's something to be aware of. And I did love the fact that more so than most joint practices, there was a lot of hugging going on before and after this practice. But it was fun to see, obviously the head coaches, Mike and Matt, they're brothers, and the parents were out here, and that was really great to kind of see them interact with each other and their families together. Former head coach Jonathan Gannon is the Packers DC, and he was getting hugs from everybody from GM Monty Ossenfort to his former players before and after practice. But practice officially began with a single one-on-one rep between Max Melton and his brother Bo, who was a receiver for the Packers. And I thought that was a really nice touch that practice kicked off with those brothers.
So single, like both teams just watching those two go out.
Just watching those two, one rep.
Wow.
It was pretty funny, actually. It would have been better had the LaFleur brothers just thrown down at the 50-yard line, but it was what it was.
Yeah, Zach tweeted out, and you guys mentioned a couple of different skirmishes, but nothing in which Matt had to be tagged in or Mike had to be tagged in, as was talked about earlier in the week.
Dani and I were amongst a couple of reporters that got to talk to Dani LaFleur, their father, and at one point it was brought up about who might win that, and he made clear that once upon a time he was the one who was taking care of business in terms of battling his son. He did also add,
though, that Mike is about 7 years younger, and at some point wrestling becomes a young man's game, so... He didn't pick sides, but he did say that.
Mike did note earlier in the day of Matt has had a pec injury and I think a shoulder injury. So the implication from Mike was like, I know where his weak points might be.
I did notice that the father was wearing a Packers hat. Was mom wearing any Cardinals gear?
Well, he was wearing a red shirt. So he really did try to kind of appease both parties.
I need the logo. The color doesn't matter. I need the logo. If you're going to wear a Packers logo, you got to have Cardinals logo to balance it out, right?
I mean, he does live in Green Bay.
They live in Titletown.
He admitted that he was trying not to do anything. He wasn't going to wear anything, and then ultimately he needed to grab something for his head. He did say he has a Cardinals hat. He just chose the Packers visor, so it is what it is.
Because now we're going to speculate and analyze what you guys saw, what's been written, what's been tweeted, and everyone's got a take. Did anyone win today? I mean, Darren, you mentioned this was much better than last season in Denver or even against the Colts or the Vikings, but was there a winner at all?
You talking about with the teams?
Correct.
I mean, it was funny. Before practice, Mike LaFleur said that he had told the guys, he goes, I'm not looking for you to win practice. He goes, I don't even know what that means. Now, I will say, now that it's over, it felt like the Cardinals won the practice because one, you're left with a much better taste how it ended. I mean, their practice went up. The Packers practice, if you want to do it by that way, did this. And both Zaven Collins and Michael Wilson were noting that it was the scripted plays that probably that they were a little off with the scripted plays for whatever reason. And on both sides of the ball, that affected them. But I noticed that they both said that separately, that once everybody started, quote unquote, playing football like you would in a rhythm, that the Cardinals started playing a lot better. The other thing, too, is Mike LaFleur ended up starting practice. It was originally supposed to start locally here at 10:30. It ended up starting at 11:30. That was Mike's call because he basically told his brother, man, like, you're starting at 8:30 Phoenix time, and we just got here. Like, give my guys an extra hour. And it did feel a little bit, and Dan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, it did feel like it took them a little while to, like, get used to I mean, let's face it, these guys have been mostly practicing in the afternoon. I know there's been a couple morning practices, but mostly in the afternoon in Phoenix, and now you're 2 hours earlier. It just felt like they needed a little time to get going.
Sure. Now, that's not an excuse on game day, right? It's the same situation where the team traveled the day before and then you wake up early and you have practice and it's like, okay, well, when that's a game day, like you don't get to move the game back an hour for, a little bit of extra sleep. But it did feel like they were sluggish at first until they really got going.
And
yeah, Michael even told you guys that it felt like there was a lull little bit before.
He's like, there was a little bit of a lull early, but again, like Dani said, there can't be excuses. Mostly, I would say that they quote unquote won because when it got to it was all competitive. Don't get me wrong, but when you're doing the competition for most of it, and it's on one end, it's first team offense Cardinals versus first team Packers defense, and vice versa on the other field. There's all this going on. When you get to that last 2-minute drill, and it's just 1v1 on the field, and everybody is watching in the stands, on the sidelines. I mean, everybody's watching that. And to have the Cardinals, both their defenses did not give up any points, and both their offenses got touchdowns. That leaves a mark.
That's 4 for 4.
Outside of Marvin, Dani, was there any, we say who won, but were there any winners that might have done themselves a favor when you're talking about this initial 53-man roster that needs to be set Sunday?
I don't know if at this point necessarily, at least on offense. I mean, from we've heard it was John Gaines and Hayden Connor kind of taking snaps at right guard, and it was Gaines, which makes sense just with the experience. So depending on the update for Isaiah Adams' knee, which precluded him from making the trip altogether, it seems like that right now the backup plan for right guard is John Gaines. But I'm not sure offensively anything was done that would really move the needle anywhere else. And then on defense, I don't necessarily think anyone stood out more than the other. I thought Denzel Burke and Max Melton both looked good out wide. You saw good things from Baron Browning or Jordan Birch, but that's not going to change the fact that when Josh Sweat is able to go out there and participate, he's your main pass rusher, right? So you saw good things, but I don't think that truly it was enough from one player to necessarily drastically change where they are. It's going to be all-encompassing for these decisions.
Anyone from your vantage point, Darren, outside of what Dani said? Or
I mean, I think obviously you mentioned, Dani mentioned Burke and Melton. I did notice Max Melton quite a bit. And again, Will Johnson wasn't practicing today, so they were going to get more reps as it was. I think that no matter what happens with Burke and Melton, they're both on this team. Not that Burke wasn't going to be, and I think Melton always probably was going to be, but there's going to be some choices at cornerback, I think, at this point. But I thought they finished well. And when you consider, again, where this defense has been, as little as we've seen the main guys, I think that was really important. But no, I mean, the guys that really, who really stood out to me today, Craig? Trey McBride. He is really good. And when the offense wasn't going well early, it was Trey McBride who got the first couple 3 catches that kind of got him going a little bit. Jacoby Brissett went back to him, and I'm pretty sure he was going to be on the roster, but I'm just saying he played well.
You think he might be starting week 1, Darren?
Probably. I'm guessing. I'm guessing.
Take note, fantasy football players.
You already hinted at it earlier, Darren. So as far as this game coming up on Friday, it sounds like, listening to Mike LaFleur before practice, that it's going to look very similar to the Cowboys game, in which basically no starters are playing. There might be a handful of regulars that see some action, but it's going to be what we typically see in this final preseason game is the players that are out there, you're battling for a roster spot.
Yeah, and that's how it was going to go. And again, as Dani and I saw out there today, like the number of reps all the main guys got today, it was a lot of reps. I mean, they did a lot on both sides of the ball, so they got their work. So you're not going to want to expose them to any more stuff, anyways. So, for me, one of the big questions is like, do you just play Keaton Slovis the whole time, or does Gardner Minshew still start, and how much do you play? Because he got a bunch of reps today too, and Carson Beck's still not practicing, so he's not going to play in this game. And so, like, exactly what do you do? How does that work out? But yeah, ultimately, the guys you're going to see this weekend are the ones that, if they haven't already made a decision, there's probably a lot on the line in terms of these last few decisions that might have to be made.
There's going to be some caveats, though, and the quarterback is one of those. I think of linebacker Cody Simon again, of somebody who we saw last week against Dallas, and not because he's fighting to make a spot on this roster, but because he's going into his second year. He's inexperienced, and as you get into the regular season, reps become really limited, not just in a game standpoint, but also in practice during the week. And these are opportunities for players to continue to get more comfortable physically and mentally. So there's going to be nuance in some players who are going to play or start Friday, and it's not because there's a chance they don't make this roster. It's because, one, you need players on the field, and two, these are still valuable reps, especially to younger players.
There were about a half a dozen defensive players who were on the field against the Cowboys for those first 2 series, and they sat. You mentioned Jordan Birch, Cody Simon, Darius Robinson, Max Melton. So someone's going to have to play in this game coming up on Friday. 5 o'clock is the kickoff. 2 o'clock pregame coverage begins on the Arizona Cardinals radio network. Before we get into some other news and notes as far as what has happened before the joint practice, I think it's about that time, Dani, that all the way from Green Bay, Wisconsin, we get cultured.
Can we get cultured in Green Bay? Is that an oxymoron?
Find out. We're about to find out.
Well, as Mike LaFleur mentioned, there's not too much to do in Green Bay, so what else are you going to do than watch the joint practice?
Hey.
And get cultured.
Well, first we gotta pour one out, guys. Dolly Parton and Tim Curry. That's pretty sad. That was kind of hard. Back to back.
I'll say this. I don't know if I have seen, read, or heard an individual get more praise, more love across the board internationally than Dolly Parton and what she has done as a singer, as an actress, in her philanthropy. I mean, it is unbelievable. Might be the most beloved person in a long, long time.
I'll be honest. Humanitarian, yeah.
Dani, I didn't even know about Tim Curry until you just said something.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So you just delivered that news to me.
Well, you've been cultured. You asked if it was possible to get cultured in Green Bay, and I'm really sorry that's the way it was done. But yes. In other news, college football continues to be in disarray. And I'm really doing my best to keep up. And
Was it ever in array?
A couple of years ago. I think the lid just was blown off with NIL, and it's just been hard to kind of wrangle everything back in, right? Like the can of worms was open and you can't bring it back in.
It used to be gruntled, and it's no longer.
So conferences are scurrying to try and set a precedent on if a player goes to the NFL, whether they're drafted or they sign a contract and they're with the team throughout the offseason, throughout training camp and preseason, if they're cut or they leave the NFL, can they come back to college? And you've got some coaches like Lane Kiffin, who we already know has approved the number change. It seems like anything goes in his book. He's all for it. but you've got the Big Ten, you've got the rest of the SEC. They're trying to figure out whether or not they want players to be able to come back to college and how they want to go about this, because it doesn't seem like most conferences are in favor of allowing that moving forward.
No, and there was NFL news today coming down that if these guys do go back to college, they cannot play this year in the NFL if you leave, but they will be free agents when they come back.
They're also not allowed to declare for the draft or participate in the combine or any sort of pre-draft. You can't do all that twice.
A do-over.
So, wild times we are living in. Speaking of wild times, sometimes I just want to make sure that you guys are, this is not personal by any means. I just want to make sure you guys are caught up to speed on things going around in other parts of the sporting world. So, Darren, I know how you feel about the word ironic being used ironically, and I'm hoping this is an instance where it's appropriate, so you let me know.
Okay.
Because
we can bring in Mark Dalton if we need to.
Ironically, the LA Dodgers' new partner is Kalshi, the prediction market partner. You know, the team with the pitcher who had a betting allegation against him where he was cleared. The team with the owner who's under federal investigation for improperly funneling billions of dollars into his business ventures.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you guys were all caught up and cultured on what's going on in the Dodger world.
We're just letting that settle in. All the other teams in baseball needed to do was just be willing to spend like the Dodgers. That's what we were told almost all season. It has nothing to do with salary cap. You need to be willing to spend the money.
Which is in less array right now? The MLB or college football?
Oof. I'm still going to say college football.
Great question.
That is a good one. And it's drastically going to change in about 4 months when we find out that baseball is going to be locked out and we won't have it for a while. But
did I use the word ironically enough for you?
I'm not 100% sure that's right, but I will probably be following up with King of Irony, Mark Dalton, to whether
I look forward to it.
Yes.
Well, I hope I did you both proud. You've both been cultured, hopefully from Green Bay. You're welcome.
Yeah, well, we appreciate it. You definitely delivered news for me.
Yes.
Sorry.
What I also found in Green Bay, and I don't know if they had to ship this themselves or they found one, but Michael Wilson posted on Instagram that there is a ping pong table wherever you guys are staying. So that competition is carrying over from Arizona to Wisconsin.
That's not new. I mean, first of all, a lot of hotels have that as an option, or the team just packs it up in their truck when they send the equipment. But I remember when we were in Indianapolis for joint practice 2 years ago, there was a ping pong table as well for them. And that's common too, is they're in the hotel and, they have the same stuff at the Wigwam, right? You're trying to keep them somewhat entertained in between meetings and all that good stuff. But yes, the ping pong table is here.
There was one in Minnesota a couple of years ago too, if I recall correctly. So
anyway, the two of you try to squeeze in a game in between. No.
We're just lucky to be able to get a couple of meals.
Please don't spread the word that Darren and I are going and playing ping pong. It's not true.
We're gonna tread carefully.
Staying in our rooms.
Stay in your lane. Make sure you stay in your lane.
I will say, talking just one quick follow up from the practice today. I know we talked a lot about it already, and you had mentioned earlier about the winning part. Like when they were training up, like again. Even before the 2-minute drill, they had a red zone drill where the offense was really, really effective. And I think that's when the defense started playing really. So I just want to keep going back to, it feels like this offense has a real chance to do some things. I know we didn't see a lot of it in the Cowboys game. And I think there's multiple reasons for that, but every other chance we've had a chance to see it, whether it's the Hall of Fame game or the Vegas game or now this joint practice, it's been impressive.
And what feels different is it's not just the starters. When you're looking all-encompassing of every preseason game so far, joint practice, training camp practices, all 4 quarterbacks have played good, clean football. They've been accurate, they've been calm under pressure, and they've protected the football. All the receivers, tight ends, they have gotten open, they have found the end zone, not a lot of drop passes. With the exception of pre-snap penalties, the first and second team offense has looked good, and they've generated rhythm, and they've played clean football. And that's what feels good and different is, we can look and we didn't even have to watch joint practice, right, to look and say, okay, we know Michael Wilson's going to make some plays. We know Marvin Harrison. You can go down the roster and know that they have the players to make plays. But it's been really impressive to see that regardless of the combination of players out there, that this offense in particular is consistently making good plays.
So what you're saying is Mike LaFleur knows what he's doing and is running a solid offseason going into training camp, going into preseason. He seems like he knows what he's doing, correct?
Very much appears so.
I would say that correct.
Let's open up the mailbag on that subject.
Oh boy, I thought you were just asking that. That seems like that was intentional wording. Okay.
It's all about segues with Craig.
Did we not save the sound of
yeah.
ripping that paper a few weeks ago, Cody? God, what has he been doing?
Wow.
I can just see Cody behind your screen right now.
He can't even hear right now, and he's getting strays.
Yeah, that's okay.
Well, I shouldn't say that. I know he's got lots of other sounds he could use as blackmail against me. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
So the mailbag, whether there's a sound effect in post-production or not, who knows? But the mailbag. By the way, do I have permission again, Darren, to open up at least one piece of mail?
Go right ahead.
I feel like to ask this. I don't want.
Why? Why would you feel that?
Knock on my door.
I can't even reach your door right now. It's a lot of miles away.
Yeah, all the way out in the West Valley.
You don't hear that knock? This from Ken Richards. Hi, Darren. So he starts very politely.
Yes.
Between articles and eyeballs, a picture of Mike LaFleur has been building to where I think we have a strong grip on his coaching, practice, preferences, and it's mildly concerning. Lots of 11-on-11, prefers joint practices, runs starters in preseason games more than most. See, love, Jeremiah. That's how he wrote it. This guy loves game simulation. I do see the benefit sincerely. You get good at what you do often, but unfortunately, I feel it puts our players at risk.
I answered this already, so you guys go right ahead.
No, I truly don't want to laugh because I don't want to discourage people from writing into the mailbag and us talking about it. So that's the whole point of this, is to share their opinions. Unfortunately for Ken, right? That's who wrote in.
Yeah.
I completely disagree with his opinion. You only get better by playing football. And that's why we're seeing a lot more of 11-on-11. There are benefits of 7-on-7, sure, but 11-on-11 is the closest thing you get to real football from a play calling standpoint, timing, execution, all of those things. And I think where I started to kind of chuckle to myself is the fact that we keep bringing up Jeremiah Love, and we're missing a lot of nuance there of what difference would it really have made if he had carried the ball 14 times and if it was 7 in the first game and 7 in the second, right? Like, it's not a matter of the fact that he carried the ball that many times. It's the fact that he got his ankle rolled up on. Well, that could have happened on the second play. It wasn't a situation where his body was worn down. He wasn't prepared for the play. He made the wrong read. To me, it honestly looked like a hip drop tackle is what it looked like for his ankle getting rolled up on, which really has nothing to do with the amount of time he was playing in the preseason. And that's how players get better. And you look across the board, and almost every single team is at some point playing their starters and is playing young players, especially rookies. So it's not the anomaly for LaFleur to have played his starters and to have played Love and the rest of the rookies. That's actually pretty on trend with what we see from across the league. And that's how you get better, is by playing football. And the practice schedule, from players I've spoken to, they've actually really enjoyed the practice schedule. And you can see from the start of camp that this team looks a lot more cohesive. They're playing cleaner football. The quarterback play is a lot better. So while you can't make an assumption until the regular season really starts, in my opinion, I do disagree with Ken in saying that it doesn't seem like Mike LaFleur is structuring practices the right way or the most effective way, or he's playing his players too often in the preseason. Not to mention, every team just joint practice these days. Are you kidding me? Like, there are some teams that go back-to-back and do multiple joint practices, and that's not just an opinion on LaFleur. He actually referenced the owners' meetings back in Phoenix in March, where the coaches were given a presentation that you can emulate a game, a preseason game, through joint practice where it's more controlled. So why would you not want to do that, where you can go against a different offense or defense and really test what your team can do in a more controlled environment to keep them safe? I don't understand. Like, you don't want them to play in preseason games, but then you also don't want them to practice. So where exactly are they getting better here?
The only way you keep players healthy is to do nothing until the regular season begins. And this is all sports. There's no 5-on-5.
They might not feel ready. I mean, I keep going back to however many years ago that was, 4 years ago, where after the first game, I believe it was against the Kansas City Chiefs, and Isaiah Simmons pretty much said that the defense was not prepared because they didn't get any preseason reps together.
It's why there's preseason in the NBA. That's why there's Cactus League games. That's why there's friendlies. You need to practice in order before you actually play for real. Otherwise, forget the offseason and just line them up week one. You go from September to February and don't do anything from February to February. From February to September. I don't understand this argument that happens every single time this time of year when someone gets hurt. It happens across the board, and it's just a matter of being a little bit more lucky than your opponent. And
the bottom line, too, is every time you step on a field, whether it's for practice or a game, there's a risk of injury. Every time. And it could happen in the first 2 minutes that you're on the field. Again, it comes down to, if you're playing football, there's that risk. And again, you just said it too, Craig. Like, Ken's not the first person to bring this up. One of the reasons I put it on there for us to talk about it was because there's lots of people who say those things. And you can go back and forth, and there's different ways to do it. And there's always a risk. And I get it. And what's funny is like now is like nothing. Like, even with whatever Mike LaFleur wants to do right now, it's nothing compared to what I covered 20 years ago, in terms of the amount of work that the starters and the main players would get, because that's how you did it. And so it's backed off quite a bit from when it was 20 years ago, and guys are still getting hurt because want to know something? Guys get hurt.
Yeah, that's what's frustrating, is if I understand, right? You want everyone to stay healthy. That is obviously the goal. If Love doesn't suffer an ankle injury, this isn't even a discussion. And again, the injury was not because he was overused or because there was miscommunication that they weren't ready for in the game. It was the defender. It was the bad luck of playing football.
Yeah, it was not a workload issue. It wasn't like he pulled a muscle. So that's an argument that, to me, it falls on deaf ears. Items that we haven't had a chance to discuss, we can go in any order you want. Maybe the bigger news ahead of the joint practice, was it Josh Sweat being activated off PUP, Yelda Froholt getting an extension, or the news that Trey Benson has been waived injured?
Spin the wheel, Darren. Where are you landing?
Yeah. I mean, obviously Josh Sweat is the one everybody's talking about, but Josh Sweat's still only doing individual drills, and I don't know what that's exactly going to look like in a couple of weeks. Mike LaFleur said in Green Bay that he's right on schedule for whatever the schedule is. So I can only take his word for it, but he has been activated from PUP, but beyond that, it doesn't look like he's that much closer. Now, then you have James Conner, who was never on PUP, who actually seems to have gone backwards a little bit. He was at least doing individual stuff. Now he's not even practicing. And Mike LaFleur admitted today that he wasn't sure if James Conner is going to be ready for week one. So these are the things you're kind of watching as you get closer, because we talk about, and Sunday will be the day that they make the roster moves to get to 53. But you don't want to call it necessarily final cuts, because there's lots of things that can go into it. Somebody going on IR, somebody being released, of course, or whatever it might be. There's going to be some juggling involved. You can only put 2 guys on IR on cut day that can eventually come back. So if you have more than 2 guys that you want to bring back from IR, you got to find a way to carry them through a day before you make another move. So there's a lot of juggling that's going to have to be involved. But that, to me, that's the biggest story right now. The Sweat what happens with him, and then obviously on a lesser light, Connor. Although I will say that video that we showed of Jeremiah Love taking the pizzas up on the plane, he looked like he was walking pretty good. So at least there's no limp there for him.
I'm just curious, and maybe there's not. Maybe there's no correlation, and especially after LaFleur saying Wednesday that now he doesn't know if Connor's going to be ready week 1. But the decision to waive Trey Benson, right? Is that a move that's made if there's not at least some confidence that you will be able to get Connor and Love back soon?
You said something interesting, Darren, because I think this needs to be repeated. As far as Sunday, when you announce your initial 53, you can designate 2 players at that time for IR to return, so they would miss the first 4 weeks of the regular season.
Correct.
Anyone after that, they would have to be carried on the 53 until Monday or Tuesday, and then you could IR them
just till Monday. I think you can basically do it the next day, but you got to.
Would James Conner be a candidate for that IR designated to return? I mean, Carson Beck be that guy as well?
These are great questions. I would think if you're figuring Carson Beck's not going to play anytime soon. So maybe you're
looking for a roster spot,
and maybe that is a consideration. But again, you can only do 2 of those guys, and who else are you talking about? I don't know. Like, I think they're going to have some juggling to do for sure. And the reason you're only allowed to do 2 at the outset is because they don't want you basically doing what you're talking about doing, was putting 5 guys on IR to return and then being able to stash all these other dudes and not let them go other places. The other part about this too, guys, is that I fully expect this team to make, if the right guys are there, they could make 3 or 4 waiver claims. They're 3rd in the waiver line. If the right people are there that aren't getting grabbed up by either the Raiders or the Jets, I think there's a chance they could add some guys, and that also would drastically impact your 53, because obviously if you're bringing people in, you got to be kicking people out.
I think a waiver claim potentially at outside linebacker would be a position, because right now who's rushing the quarterback on a consistent basis? Some depth along there, especially with Isaiah Adams, not knowing what his situation is. And then obviously there's the off the field consideration with Isaiah as well.
Maybe tight end, right? If Tip Ryman, right? Is there another option they like as a blocking tight end that could be available?
I think a lot of it is, I do think there are places you would look, but I think in my opinion, I think it'll mostly be nuanced to the individual that's available, less than, we're looking for this position. I don't think you go and grab a waiver of an outside linebacker, because quite frankly, I would guess most of the outside linebackers being cut, I mean, people don't cut really good outside linebackers, edge guys. So are you really going to be picking up somebody who's necessarily better than, I don't know, I don't even know who I'd be talking about at this point. So, I think it's a question of whether B.J. Ojulari is even going to be on this team, but is he better than Iku Leota, who's had a really good camp? I mean, I think you're going to keep Birch. You're going to have Browning. You're going to have Zaven Collins. You're going to have Josh Sweat. There's 4 right there. So I'll be interested to see if they actually do make those moves, but I don't know. It'll depend on who's out there.
The running back conversation is an interesting one, because you have this initial cut down on Sunday, but then you have 2 more weeks before you play a game. And is Jeremiah Love okay week 1? Is James Conner okay week 1? Because if they're not, then who do you have? You've got Tyler, you've got Bam, and this is where all of a sudden Corey Kiner potentially could find himself on that 53-man roster, because you're going to need a healthy running back. There's also the consideration, you slide someone through waivers, they're on the practice squad, and then you can elevate them on on Saturday, the day before the game, and whether that's an extra running back or offensive lineman or a wide receiver, there's that roster gymnastic as well.
I think that's much more likely. I could see Corey Kiner perhaps being like a practice squad guy, and then if you need him that first week or 2, you just elevate him. That makes more sense to me. But again, until we know exactly what's going on with Connor, before we know exactly what's going on with Josh Sweat, it's just so hard to really get a handle on what some of these might be. I mean, the cornerback situation alone is like somebody's getting cut that is a name that we're used to. Now, the way it's kind of played out, I think it might be tough for Starling Thomas to make this team coming off that injury. But like Garrett Williams was back on doing some 11 on 11 today. So he's already kind of getting back into the mix a little bit. So, okay. And then you got him and Will Johnson and Sean Murphy Bunting and Denzel Burke,
Clark, Elijah Jones.
You're probably not keeping more than 5 corners. So who's going to be cut? Who's going to end up on the practice squad? Who gets grabbed somewhere else?
Well, that's coming up on Sunday. Before we head on out of here, need to congratulate Hjalte Froholt with the contract extension. I don't know if the fan base was expecting that. I'm sure many people thought maybe Paris or Michael Wilson, but it's Froholt who was scheduled to be a free agent. Gets another 2 years. And Darren, as you mentioned on easycardinals.com, this is his second extension after being brought on board from the Cleveland Browns during the previous regime. So I can't say enough good things about Froholt and what he has done on that offensive line.
I saw somebody on Twitter saying it was amazing that for $10 million a year, which the report was that Froholt's contract was $20 million for 2 years. And usually that's a little bit above, that's hitting all the incentives. But $10 million a year for 2 years for a guy that whoever was tweeting it out, and it was an analyst, it wasn't just some schmo. $10 million a year for what he considered a top 10 NFL center was amazing. And I have to say that, yeah, we can talk back and forth about some of this stuff, but I do think that's a great price for a Hjalte Froholt who, like you said, not only has been really solid on the field, has not missed a game, started all 51 games in his 3 years so far, and is a really good leader and smart. And I just, like you said, he's like the perfect guy to have.
Where does that fit on the list of more or less than LeBron James this year? What number was that again?
I believe LeBron was a little under 4 this year. So
okay, that's a good list to be on.
It's less than Hjalte Froholt, still more than us combined.
Making more than LeBron James. Nice. Could we see anyone else, Darren, before week 1? Mac Wilson, we've talked about, is another free agent to be.
I'm not gonna rule out having another extension. Who that would be, I don't know. I mean, again, it might be a Mac. I don't know if I see like the Michael Wilson and or Paris Johnson, just because they're too big. I was going to say
at this point, you're so close to the season. At this point, more times than not, the player, well, both sides, there's pros to it. They're going to want to ride out the season and take that risk of having another great year and setting themselves up for an even bigger contract than they would get right now at this point.
Again, Paris is under contract for another year after this, so they got a little wiggle room. But the Michael Wilson thing is going to be really, really interesting to watch, especially now that it seems like, and again, it's just practice, I get it, but it does really seem like Marvin Harrison is in a good place right now on a lot of levels and has looked really good. And you're probably not going to want to end up paying both of them. So what do you end up doing, or how do you approach it? I don't know.
Before we give the final word to Dani, I need to shout out, I'm guessing the two of you saw this. It might have happened while you were traveling, but DJ Humphries is back in the league. And shout out DJ for year 12, getting signed to the Washington Commanders, always a favorite of the Bird Gang and a favorite of us here. I was not expecting that, but congratulations to DJ Humphries.
Another card. We play the NFC East. What week is that?
Yeah.
That's Thanksgiving-ish? November, right?
November 29th, State Farm Stadium. The return of DJ Humphries.
Wow. Well, he's returned with the Rams before,
once.
But it's always great. It's always great to see Hump. Truly one of the best guys I think we probably have all ever covered at some point in our career in the locker room. So very happy for him.
100%.
And one day probably in this box, because he can certainly do what we do. Probably
That's
better
true.
than we do it.
He's done it before. Big Red Rage.
All right, Dani. Last word from Green Bay.
It's time for cheese curds, Craig. It's cheese curd time.
Please bring some home with you when you come back. That's this week's Cardinals Underground.